Federal agents have raided a $14 million compound. What they found underground is staggering.
3:47 a.m., Minnetonka, Minnesota. The estate sprawled across 12 acres of frozen lakefront property. No lights visible from the road. No movement behind the iron gates. Just black ice coating the private driveway and silence thick enough to cut. Beneath that silence, federal agents knew, lay something far darker than anyone had imagined. At precisely 30:51 a.m., a convoy of unmarked vehicles approached from 3 directions simultaneously. No siren, no lights. IC agents emerged first, then DEA tactical unit, then FBI field specialists carrying equipment designed to penetrate fortified structure. This was not a routine enforcement action. The target was a $14.2 million compound registered to a Delaware LLC with no listed officers. Satellite imagery had revealed thermal signatures suggesting underground construction. Financial records traced ownership through 17 shell companies before dead, ending in Caracas, Venezuela. The operational code name was Unrest. Agents moved through temperatures registering -14 degrees. Breath crystallizing. Boots crunching frozen ground. A tactical ram swung between 2 operators, ready for the first breach. The primary gate fell at 40:03 a.m. Metal screamed across the quiet suburb. Floodlights erupted. Motion sensors triggered automated security protocol. From neighboring properties, dogs began barking frantically. Minnetonka had never witnessed anything like this. If you want the full truth about what federal agents discovered beneath this frozen ground, tap like so this story reaches more people. Inside the estate, chaos erupted within seconds. 4 men scrambled toward a reinforced panic room. 2 women attempted to reach a concealed staircase leading to the basement level. Security feeds captured everything in green, tinted night vision. ICE agents breached the main entrance with coordinated precision. Flashbangs detonated across the marble foyer. A crystal sculpture worth 80,000 shattered against the floor. No shots fired during initial entry. Minimal resistance. Within 6 minutes, 9 individuals were secured. Zip ties fastened. Rights read in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Their faces registered shock, then slow recognition of what was happening. They understood why federal agencies had descended on this frozen Minnesota night. The Minnetonka compound had been under surveillance for 14 months. Every wire transfer flagged. Every encrypted communication intercepted. Every midnight helicopter landing documented. Treasury Department analysts had identified the property in January 2025 as a potential node in something far larger than standard money laundering. The numbers told a devastating story. Between April 2023 and January 2026, or 3 million had flowed through accounts connected to this single property. Shell companies in Panama, the British Virgin Islands, and Belize. Offshore trusts spanning 4 continents. Real estate purchases across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and the Dakotas. All roads led back to Caracas, to the inner circle of Venezuelan power, to networks the DEA had been tracking for nearly a decade. Let me show you what agents discovered in the first 90 minutes. The main level appeared unremarkable for a property of this value. Contemporary furniture, abstract art valued at millions, a wine collection featuring vintages from France, Italy, and Argentina. But in the primary office, behind a panel disguised as a bookshelf, agents located a biometric safe. Inside, $4 million in cash. Bundled hundreds secured with Venezuelan banking tape. Ledgers written in coded Spanish detailing payments to American officials across 6 states. Names that would shock the nation. Dates corresponding to specific legislation. Dollar amounts that explained sudden votes, dropped investigations, and convenient regulatory decision. This was not wealth storage. This was operational infrastructure. Agents descended to the basement level. The concealed staircase had been left partially open during the panic. Humidity control systems hummed. Temperature maintained at exactly 68 degrees despite the frozen hell above. What awaited them defied expectations. The basement extended 32 feet below ground level. Concrete walls measuring 24 inches thick. Air filtration capable of operating independently for 18 months. Water purification. Emergency generators. Communications equipment capable of reaching satellites that officially did not exist. And at the center of this underground fortress, a vault complex spanning 3 chambers. Not safest vaults. The kind installed by governments protecting nuclear secrets. By cartels protecting evidence of crimes against humanity. Comment EXPOSED if you are ready to see what federal agents found behind those vault doors. Breaching the vault complex required 57 minutes. Plasma cutters. Hydraulic spreaders. Equipment borrowed from military special operations units. At 50:14 a.m., the first vault door swung open. 3 DEA agents entered with body cameras recording. The first chamber contained financial intelligence. 73 encrypted phones, all logged with recent activity. Hard drives containing communications between Venezuelan government officials and American counterparts spanning 8 years. Flight manifests documenting private jet routes connecting Caracas to Minneapolis, St. Paul International Airport to Chicago O'Hare, to regional airports in Wisconsin and Iowa. Bank account documentation for 31 Minnesota residents, judges, city council members, state legislators, sheriff deputy, immigration attorneys, a regional supervisor for Customs and Border Protection, a former U.S. attorney. Each name appeared beside payment amounts ranging from $120,000 to $6-7 million, all disguised as consulting fees, legal retainers, real estate commissions, or campaign contributions. This was not isolated corruption. This was a parallel system of governance. The second vault chamber contained operational material, 44 kilograms of uncut cocaine, laboratory-grade purity, street value exceeding $708 million, packaged in bricks stamped with logos belonging to Colombian trafficking organizations known to operate under Venezuelan government protection, 23 kilograms of crystal methamphetamine, distribution-ready, estimated to supply markets across the upper Midwest for 6 months, and perhaps most disturbing too, 1 million fentanyl pills, pharmaceutical-grade counterfeit tablets manufactured in Mexican facilities controlled by cartel chemists, each pill potentially lethal, enough to kill every resident of Minnesota 3 times over. The drugs were not intended for immediate distribution. Evidence suggested they served as leverage, materials to compromise officials, to plant during staged raids, to destroy careers and guarantee silence, to ensure cooperation from anyone who might otherwise resist. If this revelation shocks you, hit like now so more people see this story. Outside, dawn approached over the frozen lakes of Minnesota. News helicopters appeared by 60:30 a.m. Local police established a perimeter extending 4 blocks in every direction. Neighbors emerged in winter coats, filming with phones, their breath visible in the pre-dawn cold. Federal vehicles lined the street like a military convoy preparing for extended operations. Minneapolis field offices had emptied overnight. Over 180 federal agents deployed across the Twin Cities region. Simultaneous raids executed at 11 additional locations. A downtown law office specializing in international transactions. 3 luxury condominiums in uptown Minneapolis. A warehouse complex in northeast Minneapolis. A suburban residence in Bloomington. A private airfield hangar in Anoka County. A storage facility in St. Paul. Properties in Rochester, Duluth, and St. Cloud. Each location connected to the same network. The investigation had begun quietly in February 2025 when a routine financial audit flagged unusual patterns in commercial real estate transactions. Properties purchased entirely in cash. Minimal documentation. Owners listed as LLCs with no operating history, no employees, no physical presence. A single analyst at the Treasury Department noticed something others had missed. Shell companies in Minnesota traced to shell companies in Florida. Those traced to the Bahamas. From there, the money trail extended to Venezuela, to accounts controlled by individuals sanctioned by the U.S. government since 2019, to names appearing on DEA watch lists for narco, terrorism and state-sponsored drug trafficking. The analyst report escalated through channels until it reached federal leadership in April 2025. By May, the FBI's International Corruption Unit had joined the investigation. By June, wiretaps were authorized under court order. By August, undercover agents had infiltrated peripheral elements of the network. One posed as a corrupt real estate attorney, another as a banker willing to facilitate questionable transactions, a third as a logistics coordinator seeking employment. Type ES if you are ready to see how deep this conspiracy actually reached. The scale became clear by October 2025. Over $2.8 billion had been laundered through American real estate since 2018. Not just Minnesota. Luxury properties in Miami, Houston, Los Angeles, Phoenix, and New York. Mansions purchased under false identities. Penthouses owned by trusts with Venezuelan board members. Commercial properties generating legitimate income to mask illegitimate origins. Nicolás Maduro's regime had constructed a shadow empire on American soil. The money originated from multiple sources. Cocaine trafficking through Caribbean routes. Oil revenue siphoned through corrupt PDVSA contract. Gold mining operations controlled by military officers loyal to Caracas. Extortion networks bleeding Venezuelan citizens trying to flee the collapsing economy. Every dollar represented suffering, addiction, death, desperation. The DEA estimated the network was responsible for trafficking 63 tons of cocaine into the United States between 2018 and 2025, for distributing methamphetamine across the upper Midwest, for flooding communities with fentanyl that had killed thousands, 63 tons of cocaine, enough to supply every major American city for nearly a year, enough to fund gang violence from Chicago to Milwaukee to Minneapolis, enough to destroy families in small towns across Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, and the Dakotas. The human cost defied calculation, but the financial damage was staggering. Federal prosecutors estimated to $23.6 billion in lost tax revenue, billions more spent on law enforcement, emergency services, addiction treatment, and prison costs. Communities devastated, trust in institutions eroded, lives ended. Share this story so more people understand what has been happening beneath the surface of American prosperity. Back in the Minnetonka compound, evidence collection continued through the morning. Forensic accountants photographed every page of the ledgers. Digital specialists cloned hard drives using equipment that cost more than most homes. Chemists tested drug samples. Agents conducted separate interviews with each detainee, searching for inconsistencies. One detainee cooperated by 8:30 a.m. His name was Miguel Fernandez, a Venezuelan national living in the United States on an expired student visa. He had been employed as a property coordinator for 4 years, paid $12,000 monthly in cash. His responsibilities were simple: maintain the compound, accept deliveries, coordinate travel logistics, and never ask questions. He described the visitors to federal agents: men in tailored suits arriving after midnight on private helicopter, women carrying diplomatic credentials, conversations in hushed Spanish about shipments, schedules, and political developments. Fernandez had recognized faces from Venezuelan state media, government ministers, military officers, intelligence operatives, people who should never have been in Minnesota. He provided names under oath. Alejandro Vasquez, a deputy in the Venezuelan Interior Ministry, visited 3 times in 2024 and twice in 2025. Carmen Delgado, a director within Venezuela's intelligence services, present during meetings where millions in cash changed hands. General Roberto Castillo, a senior commander in Venezuela's National Guard, allegedly coordinated logistics for drug shipments moving through Caribbean routes. Each name appeared in the seized ledger. Each name now appeared on federal arrest warrants. Comment your reaction if you believe justice is finally coming for these criminals. By noon, the coordinated raids had produced overwhelming results. $184 million in cash and assets seized across Minnesota alone. 23 arrests across the state. Evidence connecting the network to 57 compromised American officials. Bank accounts frozen in 8 states. Properties flagged for immediate forfeiture proceedings, but the operation carried consequences no one anticipated. On January 9, 2026, ICE agents attempted an arrest at a residence in South Minneapolis. The target allegedly resisted. A confrontation escalated rapidly. An agent discharged his weapon. A woman named Sarah Mitchell, 34 years old, mother of 2, was killed. Minneapolis erupted. Protests spread through the city by evening. Crowds blocked major intersections. Chants echoed through downtown streets. Vigils formed by candlelight despite temperatures hovering near zero. Grief mixed with rage in ways that threatened to overwhelm law enforcement capacity. By January 11, protests had spread nationwide. Thousands marched in solidarity. New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Portland, Denver, Seattle. Signs demanding justice for Sarah Mitchell. Signs demanding accountability for federal overreach. The Department of Homeland Security faced mounting pressure from state officials, civil rights organizations, and elected representatives. The Trump administration responded by deploying additional federal resources to Minnesota. Acting DHS leadership announced the decision on January 12. The message was clear: federal operations would continue regardless of local opposition. The announcement triggered accusations of authoritarian overreach. Civil liberties groups filed emergency lawsuits. State officials questioned federal jurisdiction. Minnesota had become a battleground representing far larger conflict. Hit subscribe so you do not miss what happens next as this crisis continues to unfold. Behind the chaos of public protests, the investigation expanded relentlessly. Federal prosecutors in both Minneapolis and New York prepared indictments based on Minnetonka evidence. The charges were severe: narco-terrorism, money laundering at scale previously unseen in the upper Midwest, corruption of public officials, conspiracy to distribute controlled substances resulting in death. The charges carried life sentences without possibility of parole. By mid-January, 41 individuals faced federal prosecution. 14 had direct ties to the Venezuelan government. 11 were American citizens. 6 held dual citizenship. 4 were immigration attorneys who had facilitated visa fraud for cartel operatives over multiple years. 3 were real estate professionals who had knowingly processed fraudulent transactions. The network's sophistication exceeded anything investigators had previously encountered in this region. Encrypted communications routed through servers in Russia, China, and Iran. Payments disguised as legitimate business transactions through dozens of intermediary accounts. Real estate purchased through layers of shell companies specifically designed to obscure ownership. Financial instruments so complex they required teams, forensic specialists, months to unravel. This was not amateur criminality. This was state-sponsored infrastructure, and it had operated under federal noses for nearly a decade. The deeper agents investigated, the more they discovered. Connections to Florida properties seized from Maduro associates in 2024. Links to a $620 million forfeiture case in Miami involving yachts, aircraft, and thoroughbred horses. Ties to Venezuelan officials indicted for narco-terrorism in 2020. Relationships with Colombian cartels, Mexican trafficking organizations, and Russian money laundering network. The Minnetonka compound was merely one node in a global web. If you believe this story deserves wider attention, comment JUSTI below. As evidence accumulated, uncomfortable questions emerged about institutional failure. How had this network operated undetected for so long in Minnesota of all places? How had billions moved through American financial systems without triggering effective responses? How had Venezuelan officials traveled freely despite sanctions and terrorism watch lists? Some answers pointed directly to corruption. The compromised officials identified in seized ledgers had actively protected the network. Judges dismissed cases on technicality. State legislators blocked investigative funding. Law enforcement officers provided advance warning about planned operations. Immigration attorneys manipulated visa processes to bring operatives into the country. The betrayal was not incidental, it was systematic. Other answers pointed to resource limitations that bordered on negligence. Treasury Department analysts processed millions of suspicious activity reports annually with inadequate staffing and outdated technology. Patterns emerged only when dedicated investigators spent months manually analyzing data that should have been flagged automatically. The system designed to catch this activity was fundamentally overwhelmed. Still, other answers pointed to geopolitical complexities beyond simple solutions. Venezuela remained a sovereign nation despite its descent into authoritarian kleptocracy. Diplomatic norms constrained aggressive responses. Extradition treaties had been suspended years earlier. International cooperation was minimal while Maduro maintained alliances with Russia, China, and Iran. The challenges were immense, but they were not insurmountable. The Minnesota operation proved something essential about American capacity. When agencies coordinated effectively, when intelligence was shared across jurisdictions, when political will existed at the highest level, when resources were committed proportionally to the threat, results followed. The Minnetonka raid represented collaboration between IC, DEA, FBI, Treasury, and dozens of state and local agencies. 14 months of surveillance, careful planning, precision execution, international cooperation with allied intelligence services. Justice remained possible. Share this video so more communities demand the same accountability. The third vault chamber at the Minnetonka compound revealed something investigators had not anticipated. Behind the drugs and the financial record lay a strategic planning center. Digital maps showing distribution routes across the upper Midwest. Logistics documents detailing weekly shipment schedule. Communications equipment capable of coordinating operations spanning 3 time zones. And most disturbing of all, contingency plans for expanding the network regardless of federal interdiction. Plans for compromising additional officials at state and federal levels. Plans for establishing what the documents called permanent infrastructure, ensuring operational continuity for decades. The network was not merely laundering money. It was building something designed to outlast any single administration, any single investigation, any single enforcement action. It was building a shadow state within the American heartland. Federal analysts examining the strategic documents identified a code name for this long-term project, Operación Permanente. The plans detailed specific objective: compromise sufficient officials to ensure regulatory capture in key states. Establish legitimate business fronts, generating income to sustain operations during enforcement pressure. Create redundant communication networks immune to standard surveillance. Develop contingency protocols for leadership succession if key operatives were arrested or killed. The ambition was breathtaking in its scope, and the execution had been remarkably successful, until now. This is not corruption. This is engineered infiltration of American sovereignty. This is not negligence. This is strategic warfare conducted through financial systems rather than conventional weapon. And the war was far from over. Hit like if you believe America needs to understand the true nature of this threat. The seized assets from Minnesota operations told their own devastating story. The 14.2 million Minnetonka compound, a 4.8 million residents in Wayzata, 3 condominiums in Minneapolis totaling 3.1 million, a warehouse complex valued at $2.3 million, 4 luxury vehicles worth $5,020,000 combined, aircraft hangars and their contents, artwork and jewelry appraised at $8.7 million, cash totaling $184 million from Minnesota locations alone. Add the connected seizures across Wisconsin, Iowa, and the Dakotas. Add properties identified through network analysis in Florida, Texas, Arizona, and New York. Total documented assets approach $4 billion. Billions that should have fed Venezuelan citizens suffering under dictatorship. Billions stolen through corruption and laundered through American real estate. billions representing countless lives destroyed by addiction, violence, and despair. The scale demanded a reckoning commensurate with the crimes. Federal prosecutors announced they would seek maximum penalties against every defendant. Asset forfeiture proceedings would return seized properties to public benefit. Funds would be redirected to drug treatment programs, addiction services, and anti-trafficking operations. A message would be delivered to Caracas. American soil would not serve as sanctuary for narco-terrorists, but prosecutions require time. Trials could extend for years. Appeals would follow inevitably. Some defendants would cooperate for reduced sentences. Others would fight with resources drawn from hidden accounts. Meanwhile, the network would adapt. History demonstrated that criminal organizations evolved rapidly under pressure. New methods. New method. New accomplices. The Minnesota operations disrupted one significant break, but Maduro's regime controlled resources worth hundreds of billions. They would rebuild. They would find new vulnerabilities. They would continue. The fight was far from concluded. Comment below if you believe America must do more to eliminate this threat permanently. The Minnesota operations revealed uncomfortable truths about systemic vulnerability. Luxury real estate had become the preferred method for laundering proceeds from international drug trafficking. Cash purchases attracting minimal scrutiny. Weak documentation requirement. Properties appreciating while hiding dirty money. Assets easily liquidated when needed for operational purposes. Treasury Department officials had warned about these vulnerabilities for years. Geographic targeting orders attempted to increase scrutiny on high-value transactions, but enforcement remained inconsistent. Loopholes persisted. Shell companies obscured ownership effectively. Real estate professionals prioritized commissions over compliance. The system practically invited exploitation. Minnesota was not unique. Every major metropolitan area faced identical vulnerabilities. Miami had seized hundreds of millions in Venezuelan linked properties. New York had frozen assets owned by sanctioned oligarchs. Los Angeles had uncovered cartel networks, using real estate to store wealth indefinitely. The problem was national in scope. The solutions required political will that remained insufficient. Stronger anti-money laundering laws, enhanced reporting requirements for cash transactions, mandatory transparency in shell company ownership, international cooperation on asset tracking across jurisdictions, increased funding for financial crimes investigation units. Progress remained agonizingly slow. Special interests resisted meaningful regulation. Real estate lobbies opposed transparency measures. Financial institutions complained about compliance costs. Privacy advocates raised concerns about surveillance. Reform stalled while criminals prospered. Meanwhile, transnational organizations exploited the status quo daily. Maduro's network represented one of dozens operating within the United States. Mexican cartels including Sinaloa and CJNG, Colombian trafficking organizations, Russian oligarchs, Chinese tribe, all using similar methods, all hiding behind the same loopholes. The Minnesota raids were a victory, but they were also a warning that could not be ignored. Hit like if you believe Congress must act immediately to close these dangerous loopholes. The broader lesson from Minnesota is stark and unavoidable. Criminal networks respect no borders. They exploit every weakness in legal and financial system. They corrupt institutions built on public trust. They invest billions in subverting the rule of law across decades. Fighting them requires matching their sophistication, coordination between agencies that historically competed rather than cooperated, international partnerships that transcend diplomatic nicety, political will sustained across administrations, adequate resources committed for as long as necessary, public vigilance demanding accountability, and it requires understanding what is actually at stake. This is not just about money. This is about the integrity of American institutions, about whether laws apply equally regardless of wealth or connections, about whether foreign dictatorships can operate with impunity on U.S. soil, about whether communities are safe from the violence and destruction that follows drug trafficking. The answers matter for every American. The Minnetonka raid proved that when America commits genuine resources to pursuing justice, results follow. When agents from multiple agencies work together, when evidence is followed wherever it leads, when no one is considered too powerful to prosecute, the system can function as designed, but maintaining that function requires constant effort. Vigilance against corruption at every level, resistance to complacency when immediate crises fade from headlines, demand for accountability that persists through election cycles and administration changes. The fight continues every single day, whether the public is watching or not. Hit like if you believe justice is worth fighting for across generations. Comment ACCOUABLYT if you want every compromised official to answer for their crimes. Subscribe so you remain informed as this case develops through trials and appeals. Share this video before algorithmic systems bury it beneath entertainment content, because this story is far from over. The indictments will multiply through 2026. Trials will dominate regional headlines for years. Appeals will extend through the decade, and through all of it, the networks will adapt and evolve and persist. persist. This is only the beginning of a longer war, a war fought in courtrooms and forensic accounting labs, in encrypted communications and asset forfeiture proceedings, in international treaties and extradition negotiations, a war where every victory reveals new fronts, requiring new resources. The Minnesota operation exposed significant infrastructure belonging to a global network. Dismantling it was necessary and valuable. But the network extends across continents with resources measured in billions. The question is not whether America can win individual battles. The question is whether America possesses the sustained will to win the war. That answer will define the coming decade. It will determine whether foreign cartels and corrupt regimes can purchase influence over American society, whether luxury estates can hide money soaked in blood, whether billions can flow through financial systems unchallenged, whether justice is merely an ideal invoked for speeches or a practice enforced through daily action. The people of Minnesota are watching. The families of overdose victims are watching. Communities devastated by addiction and violence are watching. They are waiting to see if their government will truly protect them. The Minnetonka raid was a promise, a declaration that no criminal is untouchable regardless of wealth or political connection. That corruption will be exposed wherever it hides. That networks will be dismantled however long it takes. That justice, however delayed, will ultimately come. Now comes the difficult part, keeping that promise, every day, in every city, against every threat. Because the cartels are not resting. Maduro's allies are not surrendering. The networks are not dissolving. They are regrouping. They are adapting. They are planning. And America must be ready.